In Ahmed's presentation, he was talking a lot about an alternative approach to authorship and one that's more distributed. And part of how I'm setting up this conversation today is actually not moving too far into the distributive model of authorship that we might look at with wikis, but one that sort of presumes strong structural articulations to that notion of an author as an individual who's producing a text of some sort. And I think this quote from Carol Birkencotter and Tom Huckins' book on genre knowledge supports that kind of approach. Written communication functions with disciplinary cultures to facilitate the multiple social interactions that are instrumental to the production of knowledge. Lofty. In the sciences and humanities, maintaining the production of knowledge is crucial for institutional recognition, the development of subspecialties, and the advancement of scientists and scholars' research programs. And so it really does, again, I think our promotion and tenure criteria still support that notion of authorship as we have to identify who that person is who has primary responsibility for this. I think issues of wiki and other kinds of technologies start challenging not only those notions of authorship, but also those structures that support particular notions of the author and rely on those notions. So again, I'm wanting to couch this conversation and maybe put some boundary markers along our inquiry a little bit to think about the ways that, yes, academic authorship is changing, and we can either go in the way of going, oh no, or oh yes, but really maybe temper some of that, the sides of the continuum of the response. And one of the ways through that might be through genre theory. And so, after I received tenure at Cal State Chico, a teaching institution, my tenure clock restarted when I took the position here at RIT to direct the writing program. I was excited. I started on an ambitious research agenda. I wrote up a draft of a book prospectus, attended our national conference. I started talking to editors, and two editors across the rooms from each other, they couldn't hear each other, said, have you considered digital formats? Well, having done my PhD work up at Michigan Tech University, where one of the founding editors of Computers and Composition was then department chair, I had a lot of colleagues in my graduate cohort, both previous to me and after, who had done their dissertations on digital formats, on multimedia, on digital design, and things like that. And so I was immediately somewhat nervous. Because my research had taken me in a different direction, namely in health literacy. And so I was anxious about, I am not going to have the skills necessary for me to produce a text in digital format. Or at least, if I do, since my tenure clock has just restarted, am I going to have the time to get those skills, to learn them, to practice them, and able to produce this document that these publishers are encouraging me to consider? And so I was a little nervous, as you might suspect. But my aim for the session today is to engage with you in a discussion about reading and writing experiences in your fields, that in order to think about how academic reading and writing is changing. And I'll start by asking you to consider those personal and professional experiences that have you thinking about the future of reading and writing. And then following that initial discussion, I want to introduce an approach to genre and genre knowledge that I believe can serve as a productive heuristic for thinking about the changes of academic reading and writing as we observe them in our fields. Finally, I'll ask us to consider the implication of that newly developed understanding. So, have you considered a digital format? As I've said, this question produced some anxiety in me, but it also gave me an opportunity to start really what would be a continuing education in what it means to be a writer and a teacher and a researcher in higher education at this particular historical moment. And the way that I would characterize this historical moment is that it's marked by debilitating economic limitations, unprecedented technological affordances, extreme political tensions, concern about global climate change and sustainability, and expanding transnational exchanges requiring negotiation of cultural and linguistic diversity. In my field, questions that seem to be producing significant discussion include those that are what is the status of open access digital, multimedia, or highly collaborative texts like wikis in tenure and promotion review? What are the intersections of rhetoric, technology, and pedagogy? What are the uses of computers in composition classes, programs, and scholarly projects? How are linguistic and culturally different, and cultural differences impacting literacy learning, teaching, and communication? And what publishing business models are most sustainable, productive, and open? So in both direct and indirect ways, the discussion of these questions in my field contributes to my understanding of what the future of academic authorship, the future of teaching in higher education, and the future of reading. And so as we move through this, I wanted to take this opportunity to pose for you, what are the questions being discussed in your fields? Or what experience have you had that offer opportunities to start considering the future of reading and writing? Because since we have a small enough group, I won't break us up into groups. But I'll give you a moment to think about that, and then I would like us to talk about what you're seeing